Well, it's the week of Thanksgiving. We're thankful for many things. You know, our friends, our family, this platform we have, Metal Mayhem ROC. We're thankful that we're able to connect with our old friend, Rik Fox, veteran of 40 plus years in the hard rock and metal platform. He's part of the new Steeler song that's been released on the new KeelWorld compilation album. Rik, welcome to Metal Mayhem ROC. How you doing, man?
Thank you guys so much for having me. It's always a pleasure. Glad to be here.
I'd like to quickly introduce you to my co-host. Goes by the name Metal Walt. He's from northern New Jersey. You guys are Jersey kin, I believe.
Yeah, we are. Yep.
That's it. Well, Rik, I'm maybe a little bit younger than you. I'm 54, but I learned all about your back history on Frank White and Alan Tecchio's Jersey Metal book. So you're featured prominently in that book. So we definitely have been in the same area at some point, I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, you know, with the Ian Walker Band, you know, we played all over Jersey and upstate New York. And I followed that with Aggressor right before I came to LA and joined Sister, which became WASP. So, I was playing all over Jersey. It was like, you know, we played a lot of the same circuit that Twisted Sister did. The tri-state, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, was that whole tri-state area of the whole circuit there. So, essentially, we were like a live jukebox. You know, if the drinks were cheap, they were flowing, as with the drugs. And we played 6 nights a week. You know, I had Monday off to do my laundry.
Rik, tell us about the new song, the new Steeler song that's on the KeelWorld compilation, the Ron Keel compilation that's out.
Well, many months ago, Ron sent me the basics of it, a basic track. He says, here, write your bass lines and like that. So I did. And we put that together. You know, everybody does it in files now. Everybody sends files back and forth instead of just being in a room. So, I just go into the studio and it's just me and the engineer, and he just hits record and I play, and we do a couple of passes, and then it's like that. So it's kind of sterile like that without having the camaraderie of other band members around. Sometimes I get different ideas of what I want to put in there. You know, it's nice to bounce stuff off of people, but so we put this together, and then there's a little breakdown section after the solo where the whole dynamics come down, and that's kind of like where I get to shoot my shot as far as putting something nice in there, a little bass something. There's interlude. It's a little bass interlude, and I would have to say I was inspired by Roger Glover and Deep Purple and the song "Woman from Tokyo." They do the same thing. After the solo, it comes down to this little interlude, and Roger Glover plays this little pretty little bass line in there. It's just that one little couple of measures to say something. So that's kind of what I did. I put this little bass walk in there, and we sent it back to Ron. And about 30 minutes later, Ron called me up. He goes, "You knocked it out of the park." I said, "Oh, thank you." I said, "What'd you think of that little bass part in there?" I said, "You could leave it dry, or you could maybe run some stereo chorus through it." And that's exactly what he did. He ran some stereo chorus on it, and it came out sounding great. So once that was in the can and done, and then the album came out, it's just KeelWorld is a stroll through Ron's music history, I guess he would say, of all the different types of his bands that he had, Steeler being one of them. And so that's where the Steeler fits into KeelWorld. And KeelWorld is something that Ron's been working on for a really long time, because I remember seeing different artwork that I think his wife Renee did for the album cover like long ago. And then then it was changed to something new that she did, which was equally as impressive. And so the album came out, and because of the nature of the industry, you have to keep certain things under wraps for a while until it's the right time to present it, to the world like that. So Rogers tells me, he'll send me something and say, keep this under wraps. This is, just off the record until we have a green light to put it out. So it's like, that's how it's done in the industry. So then we got the word that Brun says we have the opportunity to do a video. So I was like, wow, okay. And so Mark Edwards, our drummer, had the majority of the arrangements to set that up. He pretty much set a lot of that up. And so, Dwayne Miller played on the session track. And Mark has been up, for people who don't know, after Mark left Steeler and he was in Lion, one of Mark's side hobbies is motocross. So Mark got into a motocross accident, which broke his back, and he wasn't able to play for the majority of his life after that.
Yeah. And
so he pushed so hard, so passionately to be a part of this, physically demanding on himself, that he worked on trying to play the song on his own, like 8 hours a day, every day. I don't know how he got the time to do that, because he's a busy businessman. And through his own physical therapy, he learned the whole song. And so when it came time for us we all flew to LA and we shot the video. David Pear was the director, the videographer. David he does all the Dead Daisies videos. So we did that. We went right from the airport, actually, right to the studio without even taking time to relax. And we just kind of walked in just to see the setup and how it was all, how the stand stage was set up. And David said, well, Mark's not here yet, but while you're here, why don't you just guys get into some of your outfits and let's do some preliminary shots, just things like that, which we did. We were tired, but we did. We got into our outfits and oh, you know what? Mark was there. Mitch hadn't shown up yet. We were waiting on Mitch. And so we did some preliminary shots for several hours. And I was, when you're 27, you can do a lot physically, but when you're 67, you find out what you can't do anymore that you did when you were 27. It was physically demanding, at least for me. I was trying to do a lot of the stuff physically that I was doing back in the days of Steeler in the 80s. And at the end of the night, my back was killing me. I was paying for it. Of course. Yeah, but so then Mitch showed up, and the next day was Saturday. It was like 12 hours straight, pretty much, except for I think a break for dinner. But it was just shot after shot after shot. Each of us individually had our own time alone to be shot in the context of with everyone else. And then there was all these wide masters and close-ups and all of that. So having worked in the film industry, I'm no stranger to that. I've done that for, here and there and done that dance over and over. So I know how demanding it can be. And so the video was shot and everything was, hush, hush. And so it was time to say something and whatever Ron leaks out, that's usually the green light for me to take that and run with it and promote it.
Where'd the name "Give Me Guitars" or "Give Me Death" come from?
That's Ron. That's definitely Ron.
Great title.
Yeah, a lot of titles that Ron comes up with may look or sound cliche, but those make the best song titles. I mean, look at Kiss. All these song titles are all cliche, but they work. And they work for the song. And so that's the most important thing, is that whatever the song calls for, I guess, is that it works.
Yeah.
It's cool. It's cool. I like the lyric in there. Like, he opens up and he refers to smoke on the water and paranoid and eruption. So it's like a cool little song, and it's like, I was funny. I remember John, when the video premiered a couple of weeks ago, I was calling John and we were like, yeah, we should get in touch with Rik. And, the whole day turned into give me blank or give me death. Everything the whole day was we just replaced guitars with something else. It just turned into some fun. But, hey, Rik, I wanted to ask you, how did Mitch Perry get in the mix on this whole thing?
Actually, I was told that, but when Mark was in Steeler, he was a roommate, I think, with Mitch Perry at one point. And for whatever reason, I don't know why, Mitch never came down to audition for the band. And so, when we got Malmsteen in the band, Mitch was doing other things. he's a really low-key, quiet guy. The music does the talking for Mitch. And so Mitch has played with almost everybody. I mean, Cher, Johnny Winter, or Edgar Winter, Michael Schenker, Tallis. He was with all of these bands, building his own resume. And after, I think it was around the time we did the first Keel Fest in 2019 in Ohio, in Columbus. Mitch came on board to take Malmsteen's place. And it was the first time we had all ever played together in the same, well, actually, I take that back. We rehearsed first in LA before, we did the Columbus thing. And Ron was kind of, I guess maybe if my interpretation would be taking a leap of faith to see how this was going to come out. And we got in the room and Ron ran the recorders and we did the first Steelers song and we stopped and Ron looked at us. He goes, "Welcome to Columbus, boys. We're going to Ohio." So it was, we went through the Steelers set a couple of times and it felt great. I had never played with Mitch before. And so, Mitch had said by his own admission, he goes, "I haven't played these songs in like over a decade. I've never played it. He never really had a call to do it." So it was a kind of a memory recall for Mitch as well. And we just blazed through the songs and it felt so good that the first Keel Fest went off great. We had a second Keel Fest at Rockin' Pod in 2023. That went off, for the most part, it was okay. Mitch was having some surgery at the time. So he played more of like kind of rhythm guitar with Ron. We had a guest lead guitarist come in, and for the lake, forgive me, I can't remember his name. He came in and he did all the lead guitar parts, and that was Keel Fest 2. But Mitch his surgery has healed. All his convalescing has healed since then. So by the time he came to do the video for "Give Me Guitars, Give Me Death," I mean, Mitch was in his element. He was. Yeah, I mean, how can you top that? Mitch he knows how to deliver. He knows what the song calls for. He knows how to say his part, in my opinion, for what the song is calling for. He doesn't overplay, he doesn't underplay. He just plays perfectly. And Mitch brings a lot to the table. And I think, it came off, very successfully. We were all very happy with it. And I don't know, Mitch was just a perfect guy for the position. Of all the guitar players, I guess that Steeler had, Mitch just fits the niche notch, whatever you want to call it, perfectly.
Have you talked to Yngwie in the last 20 years? And how do you feel about him bad mouthing or talking down about the time with Steeler?
I know I can't speak for Yngwie himself. I know that he was offered the opportunity to come in and do this, which he turned down. He's been offered the olive branch many times, and he just does not want to have anything to do with us, with the band, which is unfortunate and sad. His reputation speaks for itself, so I don't need to go there with it, negatively. Mm-hmm. I think the last time I spoke to him was 2019. There was a band I was jamming with in LA, and they were going to go see him play at a club called The Rose, which was in Pasadena. I think it's closed now. It's one of those dinner theaters like Canyon Club. And they kept urging me, "Let's go backstage. Let's go backstage. You know him. Let's go say hi. I said, "I don't know. I don't know if that's such a good idea." And he said, "Well, we had the backstage wristbands." So this was like after sound check. It was like, nope, the club was still empty. There wasn't that many people there. They were playing music over the house system. And so we worked our way backstage. And it was the road crew was already having dinner. They were off on the side having dinner. It was very quiet. And Yngwie was sitting in his dressing room, not the band dressing room, his dressing room. And he was on his cell phone. And I stuck my head in and I said, "Hey, there's the Viking." And he looked up at me. I don't know if he recognized me or not, but it was very, very terse. I'm not ready to see anybody right now. Please leave. Like that, And in the space of him finishing the sentence and us turning in the doorway, there was like this 6'5" security guy just popped out of nowhere. And he says, out. Let's go. Out. And he took away the backstage wristbands. And he gave us after show wristbands. And after the show, Yngwie's drummer came out. He knew the drummer that I was playing with, and we discussed what had happened earlier in the evening. And he goes, "Oh, you're the guys that happened to." He goes, "We heard all about it." He goes, "Malmsteen was pissed. He was reading the road crew, reading them the riot act. He was like berserk. He wanted to punish everybody for us being." So, being tossed out of a Malmsteen show became like a badge of honor, And so we got right on Facebook and we told everybody, "Hey, we just got kicked out of Malmsteen's dressing room." And everybody was laughing. That being said, it was the last time I saw him. It seems like his personality hasn't changed. If anything, it's gotten more intense. We stayed to see the show, but Malmsteen is Malmsteen. In my opinion, after 5 minutes, we already get it. We get the shtick. What else is there? And
going back to the Steeler days, how long was it wasn't a long tenure that the band was going on.
I was in the band for about a month before Malmsteen. Ron told me officially I was in on my birthday. Actually, we were at the Rainbow. It was December 28th, 1982. It was about 7 months after I was out of WASP, and so Ron and I and Mark were practicing three-piece during January at the Steeler Mansion, and then Malmsteen came in almost a year to the day when I had arrived in LA. I got there in February 4th of '82. Yngwie came in around the same time in '83. And we picked him up at the airport, brought him back to that, and it was culture shock. He was not expecting what the Steeler Mansion looked like. And for those who don't know, it was three gutted storefronts, and we had roaches running everywhere. It was a very Spartan situation. It was not glamorous whatsoever. And so that was a culture shock for him. When we finally put on the guitars and got to rehearsing, it was kind of a little uneasy, which, he was feeling us out. We were feeling him out because now we were in the same room as opposed to hearing him on a cassette. And at some point we stopped a song and he asked Ron, "Can you do something about these songs to make them a little more interesting? Because they're really quite fucking boring." And so I looked at Mark up on the drum riser, and he looked at me, and he just looked up at the ceiling. And I'm thinking, did the new guy just say what I thought he said? Did he just insult the boss's songs? And so my observation was Ron did the quickest slow burn, i.e. turning red in the face, but not saying anything. And Ron just went, all right, we'll take it from here. And the next several days, we started auditioning other guitar players while Malmsteen was still there, staying at the place with us at the Steeler Mansion. So that felt really awkward. It's like getting married, I guess. This is a great analogy. It's like getting married and then not culminating the wedding night and bringing other women in to test how it's going to go. And so Yngwie came around and he said, all right, let's do this. I'll play the game. Let's do this. And we finally got down to business. And we got so tight, you couldn't slip a piece of paper in between us. We I don't know, how did I put this? We were so in the pocket, you wouldn't know your change was gone. There's a little David Lee Rothism. And so within that month of February of rehearsing, several hours a day, every day, constantly. Then came the first gig, it was March 11th at the Country Club opening for Hughes Thrall. And the reaction, Yngwie likes to say, he's got selective amnesia. He likes to say that we played the Country Club, there was 30 people in the room. I mean, straight up, man, the guy's so full of shit, it's not funny. The place was packed. It was sold out. You know, I mean, it was show that the show, the country club was absolutely packed that first show. And we did really well. You know, it wasn't your daddy Steeler. It wasn't the original lineup. Nothing against the original guys because they were great too. But this was like a shock to the audience because they're like, well, wow, who's this guitar player? And oh, who's this guy in the leather outfit? You know, myself, like that. So it was received incredibly well. And subsequently, every show we did, I think it was 6 or 7 shows with Malmsteen and myself. Every show was a winner. We knocked it out of the park. Each and every, the word of mouth spread so fast from show to show that every show, no matter where it was packed. Because, you know, mostly, Steeler had its reputation. And of course, you know, Malmsteen was doing his incredible guitar playing. So that spread like wildfire through LA, and every show was packed. So I don't know where he gets this nonsense from that, oh, the shows didn't do that well. There was nobody there. That's untrue. It's completely false. Every show was packed and crazy. The fans were insane. It was off the hook.
Hey, Rik, going back to your beginning at the top of the hour, you mentioned you cut your teeth in Jersey and New York. I was reading up on your, biography, and you grew up in Brooklyn. I'm a North Jersey guy, but you covered off on the Steeler area. We're going to touch a little bit on W.A.S.P, but even before that, it kind of mentioned that you were a musician. Also, maybe you dabbled in some photography. Your first band played at places like CBGB's in Maxis, Kansas City, New York. But there's some like folklore around that you were around during the formation of Kiss, and that you may have dated Peter Criss's sister. Like, what's this all about? Is this all fact or is this fiction?
May have. I have a may have for you. Yes, it's true. The rumors are true. I met and dated one of Peter Criss's sisters. His family moved from Williamsburg to Brooklyn to Greenpoint, and they just happened to move into an apartment right around the corner from where I lived. And so I would see Joanne and her sister Donna and one of their friends from around the corner, Amory. They were playing ball down the end of the street, just kicking the ball back and forth to each other. And I kind of stood there and watched them for a while, and they saw me and I saw them, and they, accidentally kicked the ball over to where I was, so I would give it back to them. And that's kind of how we broke the ice. And then during our conversations and whatnot, they said, well, our big brother, because they have another brother, it's Joey Criscola. It was pretty cool too. But they said, our big brother Peter's a rock star, and maybe one day you'll get to meet him. And I said, all right, fine. It's okay. I didn't know what to expect. They said he was in a band called Chelsea. And you couldn't really tell from the picture on the album cover because it was like what they call a solarized negative, whereas they would take the negative and shoot colors through it. So that anybody in photography knows what that is. So you couldn't quite really make out exactly what they looked like because of the effects on the album cover. But, they gave me a copy and I listened to it. Okay. It kind of reminded me of like psychedelic Grateful Dead music, like that. And so, and some hard rock stuff on it. And at some point, Peter had come over to visit he would visit his parents every once in a while. And he was married to Lydia, of course, at this time. And they lived down in South Brooklyn, down by the Bay, I think it was. And when Peter got the gig, answered the Rolling Stone and the Village Voice ads to hook up with Gene and Paul, now he was stopping over at his parents' house on the way into Manhattan to the rehearsal loft on 23rd Street. And so he said, hey, we're practicing. You want to come get a listen? So we're like, yeah. So we all piled in the car. We drive into New York and we'd watch them rehearse. And it wasn't a very big room, and it had crates, cartons all over the walls like that. In the winter, it was cold. I think they were up on the second floor. And we'd watch them rehearse. A lot of the stuff was the songs you heard on the first Kiss album, and this was Ace wasn't in the band yet. This was Gene, Peter, and Paul, much like, to make the analogy, Ron, Mark, and myself and Steele. It was just the core three-piece without the lead guitar in it. And then they had audition guitar players at some point, which we were not there for. That's their personal business. And then the next time we went up there to watch them rehearse, Ace Frehley was in the band. He already got the gig. Hold on. Somebody's trying to call me, and I'm.
Maybe it's Yngwie calling to apologize.
Yeah, no, I doubt it. I get a lot of robocalls. Anyway, so Ace Frehley was now in the band, and so now we got to see them four-piece, and it was incredible. What he brought to the table was exactly, in my opinion, what Kiss needed or what they were looking for. He underscored everything perfectly to their music. It was a magical blend. And that's how that happened. And all this time I was, like I said, I was dating Peter's sister Joanne. And that's true. And when they did some of their first gigs, I was at the Diplomat Hotel. I was at Coventry. And I was shooting pictures at some of these gigs. And then at the press gig they did at the Fillmore East, I shot that. And so I didn't do the Daisy. For whatever reason, I could not get out to Long Island to the Daisy to see them. But we saw them at the Sunshine Inn for the Hotter Than Hell album, like that. And I shot pictures of that. And it wasn't until all these years had gone by. It wasn't really until Ken Sharp had come along and said, "I'd like to talk to you about having some of your Kiss pictures in my book." Nothing to Lose, The Making of Kiss, 72 to 75.
What about, so if you're in New York at that time, ever rub shoulders with Bob Gruen? Because, Bob was doing those New Year's Eve 73 and all the, those legendary shots.
I would see Bob around the scene, like at various clubs or like Max's or CBGB's and stuff. He was always busy. He was always shooting bands. He was very, very busy. I never personally got a chance to talk to him. He was, like I said, he was always busy. So yeah, Bob Gruen was to the New York rocker scene what Niels Lozauer was to the LA rocker scene.
Like 10, 15 years earlier. Yeah. Rick, that's exciting times, man. There was like, that period. It was early Kiss, Twisted Sister, the glam of New York City, New York Dolls. What about any of the punk scene? Get involved in any of that? The Dictators at the time, and you mentioned CBGBs. I know it was a few years later, but that mid-70s era. And how long were you in New York before you eventually made it out to Los Angeles? Because as I'm a real upstate New Yorker, Western New York. That's where I am. But like Metal Walt, he's down in Jersey, and yourself, these roots. I have a great fascination and respect for the whole New York scene. Everything from the Garden down to L'Amour's, both L'Amour's and CBGB's. So tell us a little bit about, your involvement with any of these other clubs, and how long did you shoot, and any of those stories? And then we'll get on to the West Coast era of Rik Fox.
Well, as you know, I was born in New York. I was born in Amityville, but I grew up in Greenpoint, Brooklyn. And so it wasn't until, like, I guess around maybe 72 when I was in high school that I really started to, other bands started to come on my radar that they were influences to me. Uriah Heep, what the hell else is this? Spooky Tooth. I was on a dance committee in high school. So we would be the planning committee for when we would have a dance. And so when I would get there in the afternoon to help set up the cafeteria and, fold all the tables and put everything away, the band would show up and they would load in and set up their gear. And at the end of the night, load out. And so this is kind of where I started to get my first taste of being a roadie or a stage tech, is I would help the band. I just immediately gravitated to helping the bands come in, help them with their gear, help them with their setup, watch the band, make sure everything was okay. I wasn't spending a lot of time dancing. I was just fixated with watching the bands. And that's how I was exposed to a lot of the heavier British bands that were coming out, like I said, with Spooky Tooth, things like that, and Uriah Heep. And then I would help the band load out at the end of the night and go home. And that was kind of my first taste of hands-on, of being around the bands and helping them with their setups and teardowns and being exposed to what was coming over from the UK. We had a newspaper called Melody Maker. And it was like was like the Village Voice of England, I guess. And it had ads with all the clothing and ads, articles with all the bands and Humble Pie, Stone the Crows, Uriah Heep, Led Zeppelin, whatever. This was like the music newspaper of England. So there was a newsstand in Greenpoint in Brooklyn that carried this. So I started reading Melody Maker every week as well. And everything I became like this sponge, absorbing all of these different influences from all these different angles. And my world of rock was just expanding on being exposed to all of this. And I really wasn't that much of a bass player at that point. I mean, I had my bass and a little amp, but I never took any lessons formally. So I couldn't tell you an A from a G, from an F, to an E, or whatever. I would try to practice to my records down in the basement, not knowing what I was doing. And then in 1975, I had already graduated from high school in 74. I was working in Manhattan as a foot messenger. And we were in Midtown, Manhattan, 52nd and Madison, which is where all of the advertising companies were. So I was picking up and delivering all of these ads to and from the printing company to the advertising agencies. And that's when, in 75, when Bill Coyne's Rocksteady Management came on my radar because they were at 55th Street. Yeah. And I was always delivering to them. So I would be spending a little more time than necessary hanging out at the office and talking to Bill or whoever was available, you know, this, that, and the other. And so, but in 75, I'm sitting in front of the Seagram's building, which is right there on Park Avenue. It's a famous building. It's got the big fountains in it. And this girl comes walking by, and she had a haircut like mine. So at that time, the what they call the rooster haircut was becoming very popular. For those that don't know what that is, if you look on the Rod Stewart album, "And Not As Good As a Wink to a Blind Horse," if you look at the marionettes on the back, and their hair's all sticking up, like cut like this and sticking out. That was a haircut style that was introduced by Paul McGregor, and he was cutting all the rock stars' hair like that in England, and layered haircuts is what they were. And then he brought it over to America, and he had set up shop in the Village in New York City, and that became de rigueur hairstyle for a lot of the rockers that were in New York in the early 70s. Everybody was getting layered haircuts. So she had the same haircut. I had the same haircut. It was like two creatures from the same galaxy, you know, in a neutral zone, going, "Oh, you look like me, and I look like you." And one thing led to another, and we became friends, and we started talking. And she said, "Have you ever been to Max's?" And I said, "What's Max's?" She goes, you never been to Max's, Kansas City?" And I said, "No, what's that?" She goes, "Oh, you got to come." So she set up a date, and I met her down at 17th Street and Park Avenue South. It was Max's Kansas City, which started it was a restaurant, and then it was an Andy Warhol art gallery crowd, and then more and more of the scenesters started hanging out. The Alice Cooper, David Bowie, Mick Jagger, and that's how the music scene got introduced into Max's. And Andy Warhol got disenfranchised from that, and he went elsewheres. But that's Max's then became this rock and roll hangout, and all these bands would play there. So while I was there, this girl introduced me to this guitar player. He went by the name of Sebastian. He was a guitar player for the Martian Rock Band. So we started talking stuff, and we hit it off right away because we're both fans of all the 50s and 60s sci-fi movies. And so that was the icebreaker, the common ground right there. And he says, "Well, what do you do?" I said, "Well, I'm kind of a bass player, but I'm not that great right now." And he goes, "Well, we're looking for a bass player." Just so happens. And eventually we wound up changing drummers too after I was in. But I have to credit Sebi as being very patient and understanding and tolerant in helping me get to be a better bass player. Fortunately, the songs for the Martian Rock Band were pretty easy, fairly elementary level stuff. You know, it was a cross between hard rock and punk. Since you mentioned punk, there were some punk elements to it in the aggressive playing style in some of the songs. And you know, my first dip into the rabbit hole, if you will, was October. It was around Halloween. of 1975, and we played at the Max's Kansas City, opening for the Neon Leon Invasion. And I didn't really have a decent amp at the time, so Leon let me use his Marshall stack. And I'm thinking, well, Martians, what should I look like? What kind of character? Who am I in this band? What besides a bass player? What do I? Because it was a theme. It was we were a space band, so space punk. So
a space punk. Is there such a thing, or were you creating it?
Well, Sebi called it spunk. So, having been influenced, of course, by Kiss, I would sit in the basement. And I had this little vanity mirror, and I would experiment with makeup to try and create a character. And so my favorite universal monster was the creature from the Black Lagoon. So I said, how can I turn that into something? And what I did, I guess, essentially was I blended a cross between Gene and Ace Frehley and created this space reptoid, a reptilian. Before reptilian was a thing, my first character in rock was a reptilian. And I colored myself in this green makeup. I drew scales on my chest. I put a couple of drops of green food coloring in my mouth, and my mouth, I stick out my tongue, and there's this green tongue sticking out. And Sebi was real big on magic. He knew all of the stores in Times Square that sold all the magic stuff for all the Broadway magicians. So he had a gag where he would shoot fire out of the headstock of his guitar. And he showed me how it was done. I incorporated that into my hand, and I was able to shoot the fire like Spider-Man would shoot the webs out of his wrist. I would be able to shoot the fire out of my fingertip on stage. So now we're going friendly competitive over our he would have a part in the set where he would shoot fire out of his guitar. I would shoot it out of my hand. I could secretly take a mouthful of beer, and the beer would turn green from the foam, from the fruit coloring. And I would just let this green foam come out of my mouth. And everybody in the audience, the shock value was perfect. It looked like I had rabies, but it was green.
That's awesome. It sounds like the mid 70s in New York. Anything was going on. Who knows? You're 5 years past the 60s, so
I can send you pictures of what I look like. I have pictures of me in the makeup.
Well,
so
send us some of those, and we'll insert these into post production.
Yeah. Okay.
So the 70s come and go. How'd you get out to LA? That's where, the golden age of metal, the early W.A.S.P years. Now there's a rumor that you helped name the band. I always thought it was We Are Sexual Perverts. What's the
it's not a rumor, John. It's true. Despite the haters and the critics and the trolls who attack it because Blackie won't admit to it, it's absolutely true.
The Sexual Perverts, or you named the band W.A.S.P?
No, I named the band. I have to say, I got to fill in a quick spot. Right after the Martian Rock Band broke up, I wound up in a band called Virgin, and that's where my introduction to the Jersey circuit came from.
Yep.
And this predates the Bill Coyne managed band Virgin. And Ian Criss was the singer, and I credit him like Sebi, giving me the opportunity. He saw something in me that I brought to the table that their bass player didn't have. And as I look back, I'm starting to see most of the bands I joined, I was replacing the previous bass player. I seem to have what they call an it factor that I brought to the table, and that's what they wanted from me is in this band. So I got Virgin we were doing all the British glam. When John says glam, we were doing all the British glam stuff, Mott the Hoople and Alice Cooper, David Bowie, all that stuff. And we were like Twisted Sister Jr. or there was another band like Twisted Sister in Jersey called Harlow. Harlow was the big glam band in Jersey, and we were like Harlow Jr. And that's where I started to cut my teeth on playing the glam stuff. And we had the big platform boots and shoes like that. That was my introduction to Jersey. That was 76, 77. By 78, we broke up. And I was now in the New York scene doing, I was working for a lot of bands doing lights and stage setup at Great Gildersleeves, which was just up the street a few doors from CBGB's. And it was at that point, somewhere around that time, I got contacted by the guys from the E. Walker Band. I don't remember how they said I was recommended to them, but I was recommended to them. And I wound up replacing their bass player. And I played with E. Walker for about a year and a half, almost 2 years. That's where 6 nights a week came from. And then when we got back, we toured in Toronto in 80 or 81 as a band called Spitfire. We played 5 of the biggest venues in Toronto, 3 nights each. And by the time we got back, there was some friction in the band and I left. And it was right after that, I got hooked up. Here's Mike. Now Mike Varney comes into the picture. And I didn't know who Mike Varney was yet. Mike Varney was putting out a series of albums called U.S. Metal.
Yeah.
That was showcasing up and coming, what I call pistolero guitar players. Turns out I meet a guitar player from Jersey named Dave Ferrara, who has since passed away. I'm sorry to say. Dave and I met through our girlfriends, our mutual girlfriends, and we decided to put a project together we called Aggressor. And it was based off of a song he had on Varney's U.S. Metal series, album 4. And he had a song on there. So Dave was one of the spotlight guitar players on an early Mike Varney album. And so we put the Aggressor together, and we kind of stole some of E. Walker's crowd because we were playing some of the same shows, just over the border of New York, the Cuckoo's Nest and places like that. When I was with E. Walker, I think the furthest north we went was Middletown. We played a place called Rumors, if that means anything. Anyway, so I was in Aggressor, and while I was in Aggressor is when I got contacted by Blackie. When I was working at a store in New York in the Village, these kids walked in and they were vacationing in New York. They came to see Twisted Sister play at some festival. So conversation being what it is, then they walked in and, wow, you look like a rocker. Who are you? What do you do? And I said, I'm Rik Fox. I'm a bass player. And then we talked about Twisted Sister. And I said, I know those guys. I knew Mark Mendoza, when he was in the Dictators, because you mentioned the Dictators earlier in the punk scene. So I was friends with Mark Mendoza. And then when he got the gig in Twisted Sister, he called me up and said, hey, come and see the band I'm playing. I got this band I'm playing in. So I go to see Mark playing in Twisted Sister, which pissed Dee off because Dee didn't want anyone else in the building that looked like a rocker. And so they said, well, do you have any contact information? We know a band back in California you'd be perfect for. And I said, I could hardly see me leaving New York to go to California. And so I gave him a photograph I had in my bag and a phone number. And so a few weeks later, Blackie Lawless calls me up. And he says, yeah, so they actually gave him my photo and the number. And we got to talking. And it wasn't called W.A.S.P yet. It was called Sister. And I didn't have any really promo stuff that I could share with him because I was playing in cover bands in Jersey. We don't have demo tapes. I had a demo tape from the E. Walker Band, but that wouldn't really showcase what I could do. I just sent him some ads from the Aquarian newspaper and stuff like that from shows we played at. And he sent me a tape, which had some early pre-W.A.S.P songs on them. And it was really heavy. It sounded like a heavier version of Kiss. So he talked me into coming out there to audition for them. And so they got me a plane ticket. I flew to LA. And then I stayed at Blackie's house in Hollywood. And, we hung out a little bit just to get the jet lag out. We went to the Rainbow. We went to the Troubadour. I met David Lee Roth and all these other rock stars that were at the Rainbow and stuff. And then we got down to business. We went to Randy's studio and I auditioned and I got the gig. It was over 2 days. It was only 5 songs, but by the second day, they said, you got the gig, you're in. Hang on a second. Come here. My cat wants to climb up my lap. So I got the gig. And we went through a series of painstaking trying to find the amps to play through that I could rehearse with because I kept blowing stuff out. These guys were loud. these guys were so loud, and I kept blowing bass amps, try to keep up with them. And there was about a month. Yeah, that was February. By March is when I was outside Blackie's house, his rental house cottage, and I was on the phone with somebody from New York. I was kicking over leaves in the courtyard, and I stepped on a yellow jacket, or hornet, whatever you want to call it, and I didn't actually kill it. It was still moving. The stinger was still moving. And it reminded me of the old Green Hornet TV show, the logo with the hornet curled like that. So I go in the house. Blackie's on watching the Yankees game like that. I said, "Hey, you said you wanted a new band name, right?" Blackie had said, "We need something new. I can't do anything I did before. We need a new band name. We need a new band look. I don't know what we're going to do." And I says, "Well, I just outside. I just stepped on a. I got an idea for a band name." And he goes, "What is it?" And I said, "W.A.S.P." And he's looking at the ceiling and he's thinking about it. He goes, "That's a good idea." I said, "I just stepped on one outside the courtyard." And I said, "If you remember the Green Hornet series?" He said, "Yeah," because we grew up in New York at the same time, same era. So we knew what we were talking about. And I said, the picture of the wasp, the hornet, it's curled like that with the stinger. He says, all right, keep thinking like that. And that was it. And then at the next rehearsal, we all gathered by Randy's office. And Black goes, "I got a new name for the band." And he said, "What?" And he said, "W.A.S.P." And Tony goes, "W.A.S.P? Who names a band after a bug?" And I said, "I don't know, Beatles, Scorpions." And that was it. That was Blackie goes, "That's it. That we're now going to be called W.A.S.P. What we do with that yet, I don't know. But at that moment, technically, that makes all four of us co-founding members of a new band.
Of course.
At least.
Well, what about the sexual pervert acronym? Or is that just folklore?
That came way after I was out. After I was out of the band, Don Costa stepped in. He did one or two shows. He got fired. Chris Holmes came in at that point. And Chris remembers that I don't remember doing this, but I apparently called the Woodstock, one of the clubs they were starting out at, and I threatened to sue because of the name. And I have documentation of Chris saying this in an interview. And that's when Blackie added the periods to try to write a suit. So that became the beginning of the mystery. What does it stand for? Why is it WASP with periods?
I'm sorry, excuse me.
So
Rick,
people would ask him, "What does it mean?" And go ahead.
You froze up. We didn't hear the punchline of that. What you said about 10 seconds ago.
Oh, I had called up the club, the Woodstock. I don't remember this. I apparently threatened to sue them over using the name W.A.S.P. because I created the name. And that was the moment Blackie added the periods to the name. And that's where the mystery began of what does it stand for? Because now it could stand for anything. And people would ask him, "What does it mean?" He goes, "WASP, we ain't sure, pal." So Blackie started a pattern of evading a direct question with a direct answer of where it actually came from. So that's when they started to play on the weird sexual perverts thing, or "We are Satan's," whatever. I don't know. It became a running gag of what it could mean. But Blackie would never admit where it really came from.
See? Okay, all right. Thank you.
Hey, Rick, speaking of lawsuits, later on in your career, you demoed some, highly regarded underground demos with Sin. And this was produced by Dana Strum and had Mark Slaughter come in on vocals. But I was reading, and it took me some time to listen to the song On the Run. But there's a blatant ripoff. I mean, it looks like I'm a fan of Vinnie Vincent Invasion, and I love those albums. But that main riff on the Run was taken for the song "Let Freedom Rock." It's a blatant ripoff. What happened there? And was there actually a lawsuit there?
Well, that's a great question. I'm glad you asked. Dana Strum was producing us in '85. He brought us. We were under Management 3, which was Jerry Weintraub's company out of Beverly Hills. So their our manager, Todd Cooper, was friends with Dana because Dana had his fingers in everything in L.A. So he was kind of a mover shaker guy. You know, we got Randy Rhoads and Ozzy Osbourne and stuff like that. So he brought Dana in to produce us, try and get us signed, and get us out on the road. So Sin essentially would have been the next big band signed out of LA after '85, before Poison, before all of these other bands came into before Guns N' Roses, all of that. So I recently had an opportunity to sit face to face with Dana in Branson when he's playing bass for the Vince Neil Band. And so it's been a lot of years that this war has been kind of going on between us, because I felt that Dana was responsible for this. What happened was I walked in on Dana running playbacks during the studio, and Vinny expressed to me his interest in wanting to re-record the song and have me involved, but having me involved was never defined. That was just it. And of course, Let Freedom Rock, when I got his first copy of this about that, and I confronted Mark Slaughter and Bobby Rock at one of the NAMM shows, and I said, "You want to tell me anything about this? Do you have something to tell me about this tape? What am I missing?" And they both said, from what I remember, they said it was all Vinny and Dana. They had nothing to do with it. It was like, play the song or else. And so subsequently, some years ago, Bobby Rock put out his book, The Boy's Gonna Rock. And it actually says in the book, it validates that the song was stolen from our Sin song, On the Run. And Bobby goes, I don't remember the details of how that went down. He goes, but they didn't even make any attempts to cover it up. It was obviously the same hook. So when I sat down with Dana recently, I said, I'm missing Don't Say Goodbye. And he goes, come with me. We walked into the dressing room. He opens his laptop. He says, I happen to have all 4 songs because I was afraid of the day that if the tape ever broke, we wouldn't have anything to look back on. So at that point, Dana emailed me all 4 of the songs right from the master, from his laptop. And I said, now you have to understand what I was feeling and the things that I said. I'm not going to deny the things I said. I'll own that. But I was pretty pissed off because everybody was telling me it was you and Vinny. And Dana says, well, you have to understand, anybody that's come into contact with Vinnie Vincent has been burned, severely burned. Everybody, it's been a nightmare for everyone that's come in contact with him. He goes, myself included. And that's when Dana started telling me stuff behind the scenes that the majority of the world never knew about what was going on with Vinny and how mentally unstable he was. The guy was a liability from the get-go. It was a liability. Dana said what happened was Vinny didn't have any amps at that particular time of Sin. And that's when you walked in and Vinny was sitting there at the control board and told you that he liked your song. But I was telling Vinny, Vinny's listening to the song and he goes, I like that song. Vinny goes, yeah, but what do you think of the amps? Vinny goes, I like that song. So it became Vinny, what do you think of the Randall amps we're using? Vinny kept saying, I really like that song. So essentially, I guess it all boils down to is that Vinny was the one mostly responsible for the song being stolen and lifted. And that's pretty much how Dana explained it to me. But it gave me an opportunity for Dana and I to bury the hatchet, as it will, and extend the olive branches to each other. And now we're friends again. And that's kind of where we are up to date on that. People have heard the song side by side. and agreed. It sounded like a rip. And I didn't have an attorney at the time who I could go to with this and do anything about it. But at that time, when it happened, I called Chrysalis Records up and I said, this guy just stole my song. I said, Dana's the bass player in the band. And Vinny, and they called Dana up. And you know, Dana said some things to me, and it's like, you can't copyright a hook. And then, his music history is full of examples of stolen hooks that were either successfully sued over or not. So I just didn't have all my ducks in a row to do anything about it at the time. And as we see, we all see now where Vinnie Vincent is wound up. And so I guess maybe you could say fate and karma took care of that. I don't know.
Oh, sure. Well, you know what? The stories go, they're endless, but Rik, what's going on with you now? 2024, 2025, the new one, Give Me Guitars or Give Me Death on KeelWorld. What are you up to? You in a band? You playing, creating?
From your lips to God's ears, John. There's no scene like we had, here. It's the Midwest. Midwest is where big bands play and go through, but nobody stays here to keep anything going. The closest I've seen to something like that is an hour and a half away in Springfield. Is a band called Machine Gun Symphony, and they're an 80s tribute band. And the singer, Jay Stevens, he's an on-air personality for the classic rock radio station in Springfield on the afternoon show. Band, and I go to see them every once in a while. Once a day, I'll come up and I'll jam with them, but that's about as 80s as I've seen it get. There's a couple other bands that do 80s, 90s tributes, mostly tribute bands here. I don't see that much original material. But for me, I get contacted once in a while by somebody who's doing a project and they ask me if I want to play on it. Case in point, there's a guy as an artist in Norway, Stian Pjan Thorsen. He's got an all-star project he's been working on for years. And he contacted me a little over a year ago, and he's asked me if I would like to play on it. And I said, sure. So he's got a song set up. It's got Vinnie Appice on drums, and it's called Plum, like the fruit, plum. And what it is, the song itself, much in the same spirit as Give Me Guitars or Give Me Death, is a tribute to the bands that Ron grew up being influenced by.
Yeah.
Plum is a tribute to Deep Purple. And all of the lyrics are Deep Purple song titles, all strung together to create one song, which is cool. It's very clever. And Stian says the reason it's called Plum is there's two words in the chorus called cobalt and magenta, these two elements. He says when you mix cobalt and magenta together, you get purple, like the color of a plum or an eggplant. You get that same deep purple color. So he sent me the track. I recorded my bass line to it, and we're still waiting for it to come out. Not only does it have Vinnie Appice on drums, we're waiting for Mark Bowles to do his lead vocals along with Stian. And Mark, as you may know, he's a singer in a band called Red Raven right now.
Yep.
And so there's a little plug for Red Raven. So we're waiting for Mark to do his, and Mark and I, of course, both dealt.
It's another Yngwie connection
with Malmsteen. Mark sang with Malmsteen.
Yep.
Connection, whatever.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah. So we're waiting for Mark to do it. And so I'm waiting for that song to come out, and then that's pretty much been it. Ron has discussed with me various potential things he's got on the back burner for the future. I have to wait on him to see what he's going to do with that, because there really isn't much I can get my teeth into here in Missouri. We got here in February of 2021. In June of 2021, I went up to Kansas City. I jammed with Ron up there. Great White, Jack Russell's Great White, and Ron Kilband were playing, so I jammed with him up there. Recently, I just got on stage in Branson with the Stephen Pearcy Band. They came through Missouri as part of the Retromania Live. It was like an 80s concert series. So it was all these 80s bands. And Stephen Pearcy invited me to come up and jam with them, which I did. So I got to play on a huge stage in a big, massive theater. And we did You Think You're Tough, which was is now on YouTube. So that's a nice feather in my cap, if you will, my resume. And it went off great because we didn't have a chance to rehearse or anything. It was just like, go for what you know. And I got up there and then we knocked it out. You can see that on the video. And that was a lot of fun. And thank you to Stephen for that and the guys. But other than that, it's pretty quiet. You know, my wife passed away in May of 2022. So here we are in 2024, and it's like there really isn't a hell of a lot going on here, at least for me. I'm not going to move. I mean, we just got here, so that's kind of out of the picture. You know, and I don't know. I guess just wait for projects to come in if I'm on anybody's radar. You know, like that. People are asking me all the time, how come you're not on the Monsters of Rock cruise? How come you're not on this? How come you're not on that? A lot of people don't understand the politics of how those are structured.
Yeah.
And how you have to be a multi-platinum artist. And you know, it's structured on various tiers of how many millions of albums you've sold. Decides what level you are as a headliner or below, like that. I don't have anything like that. I've never been a multi-million-dollar seller like that. So there's lots of 80s bands still out there, you know, kicking and doing it on these cruises, but
doing the grind, man, doing the grind. It's hard. You get older and it's tough. Well, Rik, it sounds like, you know, you're still in good spirits. You look great. You got your cat over there. I don't know how many cats you have, but we've been hearing them through the whole interview. Three cats. Well, and you know, you got two supporters in Metal Walt and myself up here at Metal Mayhem. So
that's Misha.
Oh, there you go.
That's Misha.
Let's go.
So the album is out, KeelWorld. Check it out, the new Steeler track on there. Give Me Guitars or Give Me Death. And one more time on this Friday, the 29th, it's Record Store Day. They always wrap that up around the Thanksgiving Day holiday. And there's it looks like some a digipack is released, some different colored vinyl and some stuff like that. But how could people follow you? You're on Facebook, Instagram, Rik Fox, all those socials.
You know, I'm glad you asked. I don't know how my wife did this. She had an Instagram account, an ex Twitter account, and Facebook. I don't know how she had the time to do that and take care of all the horses. I barely have enough time in a day just to deal with Facebook, which has become an inside joke with Ron. He goes, Rik Fox on Facebook, which is funny because he's always on there too. But I have plans to do it, set up an Instagram account. I just haven't gotten off my ass to do it yet. Or Twitter. I haven't done that either. I just don't know when I have enough time. It just takes so much of my day to go through the emails, the news, the messages, and all that stuff. Doing podcasts like this, it's a great interruption from, you know, the mundane stuff.
Well, you know, glad you could fit us in with your cats and all your duties. And
I always look forward to it.
Yeah. Our listeners, just want to remind you, it's the holiday time. So get up to metalmayhemroc.com. Check out our new merch page. We have hoodies up there, hats, shirts, posters. Subscribe to the pod, leave a review. Check out our YouTube channel. All that stuff. A lot of good stuff. Metal Walt and I are releasing stuff all the time. And you'll find the audio version of this interview and the video, metalmayhemroc.com. Rik Fox, thanks, buddy. Have a great holiday. And anything Walt and I could do to help you, you know, we're a click away on that Facebook, if you will.
Would you happen to have a winning lottery ticket? I'll take that.
600th. But I can give you a 5-star pick for tonight. Take the Ravens and take
all right. Okay, thank you. It's always a pleasure to be on with you guys. Every really look forward to it. Thank you so much for having me on here. Really.
You're welcome, man.
Thanks, Rik. Thanks for the stories, Rik. Yeah. Take care.
Anytime, guys. Anytime. Thank you.
All right. We'll see you again down the line. Cheers.
Yeah.
Metal for life.
Thank you for listening to Metal Mayhem ROC. Check out our website at metalmayhemroc.com for information on podcasts, archives, links to all our live radio shows, and all sorts of info. Please like, follow, and share with everyone, even your non-metal friends. And always remember to keep it heavy.